A very old Stuart S50 steam plant, part 6, working on the cylinder. The time has come to remove the cylinder from the main bed plate, but first of all I need to remove the nut from this small pin that secures the valve rod to the eccentric rod. I'll put that in a safe place. Also, I need to remove the crosshead entirely. Before I start, I'd like to thank a couple of my Patreon supporters who pointed out that the thread form is not metric but 3/32 Whitworth, and apparently this is a very early Stuart Model S50, and at the time this was made that was the thread that they used. But that's no good to me because most of these nuts are quite rusty and therefore need replacing, and I very much doubt that a thread form such as 3/32 Whitworth is going to be available in 2019. There's some good news and some bad news. One of the crosshead retaining bolts was already sheared off in the bed plate. The good news is I'm going to rethread all of these 3/32 Whitworth holes using a 7BA tap. The cylinder of a Stuart S50 is secured to the bed plate using just 3 small bolts, and once these were removed the cylinder could be lifted off the bed plate. I'm using a wire brush in this Proxxon motor tool. You've just seen me use it on other parts of the engine. Now it's time to clean around the cylinder. Health and safety warning: when using motor tools with wire brushes in them, you must always wear eye protection, because generally speaking they do shed the bristles, which come off at a great speed. There's less centrifugal load on one of these type of wire brushes, and I do notice that they don't shed the bristles quite as much. But the other type, where the bristles stick out at 90 degrees to the shaft, shed bristles all the time. I need to take this much further than I have done so far. The purpose of the wire brush was really to clean up the heads of these bolts, which weren't particularly rusty. And in this clip I'm very carefully removing them. And now I can clean the part where the bolts were using the wire brush once more. Notice the side of the steam chest cover, it's unmachined. And this is still quite common. Often castings are under the size that you actually need them to be. I cheated a bit. I used my polishing spindle as well as the wire brush, and in this clip I'm putting the bolts back in. Once the engine's built back up, I'm going to leave the cylinder covers in natural gunmetal. I'll only be painting the cladding and the steam chest. Bob, the owner of the engine, asked me to paint it the same colour as it was, so it's going to be painted black. But now, back on with the cleanup. Here's my toothbrush. In the aerosol can lid there's some stuff called panel wipe. And as far as I know, this panel wipe stuff is called naphtha, and it smells very much like lighter fluid, the stuff that you would put in a Zippo cigarette lighter. I'm using the naphtha and toothbrush combination to just make sure I remove every trace of the abrasive compound from the polishing spindle operation. This is only the first application of the panel wipe. Before I paint the cylinder, I will immerse it in a tub of panel wipe to get rid of all the oil. And now I'm going to turn my attention to the other cylinder cover, and I need to remove this to have a look at the piston. I often use the term feel in my videos because I think it's very important, and in this case when I'm removing these very small bolts, it's important to have an initial feel how tight they are into the cylinder before you remove them, and I've been very lucky they're coming out easily. Because if one of these shears off, then that is pain. A little job turns into a bigger job. All of the bolts are loose now, and I'm taking the nut off the end of the piston rod. I'll put this in the box so I don't lose it. I've been very careful with this nut only because if I lose it I have to make another one, and in common with the other fixings, it's probably a thread form that I don't have a tap for. All of the bolts are now loose and they're looking quite clean after the wire brushing, and it's time now to remove the cylinder cover from the cylinder. And here it is. This is a stuffing gland, so I'm going to poke this material out, which appears to be cotton. Then it's back to the electric toothbrush and naphtha treatment. If you're wondering where to get some of this panel wipe or naphtha, I get it from a company called Autopaint Northern, and its proper use is for wiping down panels of cars prior to spraying. And the good news is the piston is an excellent fit in the cylinder. It's absolutely perfect. In this clip I'm carefully repositioning the gasket and making sure that I get the cylinder cover on the right way round. There's a faint mark on the inside of the cylinder cover which corresponds with the steam port. And now all I have to do is bolt the cylinder cover to the cylinder. I'm cleaning the gland nut and the rear cylinder cover in exactly the same way as I did when I cleaned the front cylinder cover. And while all parts of the cylinder are easy to get at, it's a good idea to pack the gland. I'm using a silicone rubber steam grade O-ring for this, with plenty of initial lubrication. The usual procedure for fitting gland nuts: tighten it all the way up, not too much, and then back it off half a turn. Then the friction is reduced, but it will still be a very effective seal. That's about it for this episode. The cylinder is now ready for painting. Thanks for watching, and I hope you found it useful. Please take the time to visit my Mainsteam Models website. Click on the section of the website that says Video Playlists. And by doing that, you will find it very easy to find other videos that you may like to watch.